I'm now going to teach you how to do two different effects in Procreate. So we're going to start out with an ombre technique and then how to create these very simple kind of cast shadows behind objects. So let's clear out this layer real quick. And on a blank layer or a new layer, I'm going to create a very simple circle. So remember, there are two ways that we can do that. We can either draw it, or for me today, I think it'll be easy to use the select tool, hit on ellipse, add, and color fill. And I'm going to pick a color that I like. So I'll go with this nice kind of blue color. I'll draw my circle best that I can and just let it go. Doesn't have to be perfect. So now I have just a simple circle inside of here. Now I'm going to try to do an ombre effect within that circle. So an ombre effect is when the color kind of gradiates. So it'll start one color and eventually fade into another, or it can start light and go to dark, if you think about our value scales and our gradients. So we're going to use the clipping mask technique that we did earlier. I'm going to start by making a new layer, and I will rename that gradient or ombre, whichever one. Ombre is shorter. Ombre, and this is going to be for the circle. So I'm not going to do anything to it right now, but I'm going to start by picking a pretty soft brush. So in my brushes, one of the softest ones you can pick is in airbrushing. It says the name. It's called the soft brush. So I'll go there and I will pick another color to ombre this with. For this, I'll go with this pink color. So if you are using a stylus that registers how hard you're pressing, you can see that I can press really light or I can press really hard. That makes it a little bit easier for me. If you don't have something like that, then you can play around with the opacity instead. So I'm going to make this kind of bigger, and then I'll lower my opacity down so that I'm doing this a little bit more similarly to you if you don't have something that registers your touch. So I'll start out at the top, and I'm gonna like layer it slowly. So start at the top, add more, and just keep dragging it down until the top is pretty covered. So I can increase my opacity as I go up towards the top, kind of wait until it disappears. So it should already kind of look like an ombre effect. So I'll lower my opacity down there. And it should look like it starts kind of purple and then fades down into that blue. If I go now into my layers, remember that I can hit on clipping mask and it'll only fill inside of my circle. This isn't quite as even as I'd like it to be, so I can move my clipping mask a little bit upwards and I can stretch it if I want to. Right now it's on uniform, so I can't stretch it perfectly, but if I hit on freeform, then I can move it more freely until it looks almost good. So now I have like a little bit of a fade. If I get in close, you see it's kind of streaky though, which isn't ideal for me. So I'm going to try to fix that. So in order to fix that, I'm going to hit on my adjustments, which is that magic little wand up next to gallery, then actions, then is adjustments up here. One of the adjustments I can hit is on Gaussian blur. That one's one of my favorite ones. For me, on mine, it'll ask me if I want the layer or the pencil. I will click on layer. And now it says Gaussian blur slide to adjust. So you're going to take your finger and you can slide it to the right or slide it to the left. So if I slide it to the right, you can see it's getting blurrier and blurrier. And it looks a lot more even for me. So I think that it looks pretty good like about here. So your number might be a little bit different than mine. And then once I'm done, I can just hit that again, or I can hit any other area. So I'm going to go hit on my transform tool and just kind of move it until it looks right for me. So I'm going to move it here, maybe stretch it out a little bit so it looks more even. And that is how to create a nice ombre effect. Next, I'm going to teach you how to do kind of like a cast shadow. So under my circle, I'm going to say I want a little bit of a shadow to it. And so I'm going to create another copy of this actually. So I'm going to duplicate my circle. And on the lower one, because my shadow is going to come from under, I'm going to change and rename this to circle cast shadow or shadow for circle. I don't know. Whatever keeps me the most organized. So my shadow for my circle right now is blue. If I take this and move it, you can kind of see that it's there, but it being a blue color is a little bit annoying. So instead, I'm going to change that color. So I'm going to make us have a really black shadow. So I'll just change that color if I want to. There are different ways to change colors we'll go over later, but that was a pretty easy way to do it. So I just drag and drop. Another way that I can is if I hit on where it says shadow for circle, I can click on what's called alpha lock. So now that is hit, and I can color inside of there only. So I can color it and it won't go out of the lines because it is alpha locked. So that's me actually changing the color of my circle. So I love the alpha lock function, or you can just drag and drop the color. Doesn't really matter. I'll bring back my first circle, and now you can see there's just like a little shadow right behind it. So that's a super simple way to do that. My shadow right now is very dark. If I have something that I would like to be underneath that, so let's say for some reason I want this shadow to look like it's more transparent so that I can see whatever is underneath it, I can take it and bring the opacity down a little bit, and that looks a little bit more like a natural shadow possibly. Another thing I can do is I can use that same technique that we did earlier. So I'm going to make sure that it's clear, it's not locked at all, so it's not alpha locked. And I'm going to go back into my adjustments, and once again I'm going to hit on where it says Gaussian blur, the layer, and I'll just blur it a little bit. So you can see I can make it very blurry, or I can make it just a little bit blurry. So it depends on how far you slide. So I'll make it a little bit blurry. And now once again I have a pretty natural shadow just coming out of the back there. And that is how to do a shadow technique.